1989 4 winds 205 Sundowner. Time for winterization with the OMC Cobra and 5.8 liter V8 engine. Making sure we start with treating the fuel system. Gas right there. Putting stable fuel stabilizer. This has a 40-gallon tank, so we're going to take 20 ounces of fuel stabilizer, put it directly right into the gas tank to treat the fuel system. The next thing I do is drain the water out of the outdrive. You got 3 screw plugs to do it. You got one right here, one right there, and then one on the other side right there. I take those 3 screws out, let the water drain out of it, and I leave them out. So when we go up top and start pouring antifreeze into the system, a little bit will back drain out of there. Then I'll put the plugs back in and then allow the system to fill up to make sure the outdrive and the water pump is fully winterized. With the doghouse slid forward and out of the way, that gives me access to my block and riser drains. We have a riser drain right here, nice petcock, and then a block drain. You can see it right there as well. You gotta open both of those up, let all the water drain out. Same for on the other side of the engine. Just gotta show you those. That's what it looks like there with both draining on the right side of the engine. Left side of the engine, riser manifold's right there, and the other block drain is right there on the opposite side of the block, right towards the back. Nice and easy to get to. Water just drains right down the bottom, and we get sucked out with the drain plug being empty or just run the bilge. While the drains are starting to drain and get all the water out of the system, what I like to do is come right over here to the fuel filter. It's located right here on the right side of the engine. I always like to take some pliers, crack it open, and just dump it out. Dump it overboard into a container, something like that, to take care of it safely. And then I'll put that filter back on dry. So in the spring, I'll put a brand new filter on. That way, if there's any water that's inside that fuel filter, it doesn't crack, burst, or freeze, or cause any more problems with the fuel system while it's sitting over the winter time. Next thing to do is at the front end, right up here by the thermostat, you got a 5/16 nut wrench for these hose clamps right here, and also this one right here, because this tube holds water right there, so it's not going to be able to drain just as is. And once you pull this hose off, that allows the water pump to drain out and empty all the water in the system, and then you can reuse this hose to backfill this water neck. I always like to go and pour antifreeze into each individual hose, so I'll pull this one off, pour it directly down into that manifold till a little bit comes out, close the petcock, and then fill the manifold up with antifreeze. Same with the other side. And this hose right here goes back to the impeller. So when I pull this one off, I'll pour a little bit down until I see it coming out on the water out at the outdrive, and then I'll put all the plugs back in and backfill that water system. And then same for putting it in here. This is what it looks like with all the tubes off the top. This hose has already been pulled off the bottom there and drained out. We'll use a funnel and antifreeze to help backfill all of these tubes through everything in the system. Sometimes if you want, you can quick bump the ignition on the engine just to get it to turn over a little bit to pump whatever's in the water pump out of it to make sure it's absolutely dry before you backfill in, just in case. One thing to note for selecting antifreeze for your boat is to always check to make sure you know if it is safe for engines. Obviously this one is not safe for gasoline or diesel engines, so it does not work for this boat for winterizing the engine, because I have an RV, so this is what this jug was used for. So the outdrive, I poured in from the tube up top with the funnel. At first it was pushing out straight clear water, so I had a bunch in that tube, so backfilling it allows it to come out here nice and colored. I can put the drain plug back in, and I know that the outdrive and the water pump, the outdrive, is good to go. One other thing to note when winterizing this outdrive is I always keep it in the down position, or near down, not where it's touching the ground, but near down position, because this bell right there, if you were in the up position, that can collect rain and snow and sometimes melt and then freeze and expand and actually crack this lower unit in half if it's in the up position. So keeping it down keeps a lot of moisture and rain from building up in there and causing lower unit issues. And then I also take some WD-40 and spray on the exposed metal surfaces of these rams to help prevent corrosion while it's stored outside during the winter. The book says all you have to do is drain the block on both sides petcocks, and it should be good to go for the winter, but I like to go an extra step further. So once I got the block drained, I have this ball valve installed into one of the intake manifold coolant runners, so I can use a funnel to backfill the engine block with antifreeze. So I have both valves open, pour a little bit in, make sure water gets all purged out, and all I see is the color. Close the block, drains back up, and then I backfill all the way up to the top of the intake so the block is full of coolant, so I know it is actually winterized, or if not, very lightly diluted, so there's no just water pockets in the block anywhere to crack and cause a problem. Once that gets done, I will also backfill from the water pump tube to make sure that is filled, so both sides of the water pump are filled. And then I will do the same on both risers. I'll use the funnel, add some into the riser, make sure the color is coming out of the drain, close up the drain, and then fill the riser on both sides. That way I know there is antifreeze in the block and the risers. Any water pockets will be severely diluted to not cause any freezing and things to burst. And plus that also gives a little bit of a corrosion protection, so that way rust cannot just form from the moisture being in those manifolds. Last thing I do once I put the doghouse back in place is disconnect the batteries. In the sundowner, you got one over here and one over here. Always disconnect them. Yes, there is a battery disconnect that keeps them shut down and separate, but over the winter there can still be parasitic draws, and the terminals can just develop corrosion just by sitting there, even being connected. So all I do is simply positive and negative terminals, just disconnect them, and then just put a piece of rubber hose over top of the terminal so they can lay there and they don't end up making connections or cause any problems just sitting there throughout the winter.